after the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. I just want to start by welcoming you to the Enforme Collaborative. My name is Kevin Fitzpatrick, and I have the privilege of serving as CEO of Enforme Interactive. This webinar series was conceived of as a forum for sharing issues of common cause amongst professional associations, and certainly the pandemic has made this ever more relevant as we are all trying to figure out the new normal. And that new normal is the topic of today's discussion. And we're privileged to have two very accomplished association executives who will be sharing their thoughts with us today. And we're grateful for their time and their generosity. Let me introduce Dale Fajardo, who is with the Vice President of Education at the American Academy of Ophthalmology. Dale leads the teams responsible for the Academy's clinical education, professional development, publication programs, such as the Ophthalmic, easy for me to say, News and Education Network, the largest web-based compendium of ophthalmic information and e-learning tools in the world. Now, it's interesting that I struggle over that since I have been associated with that program for about 15 years, so I should know how to pronounce it. Dale joined the Academy in 2008, brings forth 20 years of experience in delivering education, business, and process improvement initiatives for startups, for Fortune 100 biopharmaceutical firms, and the government. He holds a bachelor's degree in science from the United States Naval Academy, a Master of Business Administration from the University of Hawaii, and a Doctor of Education from the University of Southern California. So Dale, thank you for joining us today. Joining us also is Doug Fessler, the Executive Director of the American Society for Bone and Mineral Research. The ASBMR is the leading professional scientific and medical society established to bring together clinical and experimental scientists involved in the study of bone, mineral, and musculoskeletal research. With nearly 25 years of experience in association management, Doug has a proven track record of growing the associations he has served through reinforcing membership recruitment, retention initiatives, redesigning annual events, restructuring operations, and improving engagement of volunteer leaders, all activities that are essential for our navigating this new normal. He also has two young sons, Brandon and Ethan, who have joined us on other webinars, other Zoom calls, and if we're lucky, they'll come crashing into the room at some point during our event today, because they're delightful young people. So without further ado then, let me start by asking both Doug and Dale, and I'll ask Doug to respond first. Are we truly entering into a new normal for professional associations? Is it just business as usual? And if it is a new normal, how will association business models change as a result of the pandemic?
Well, thank you, Kevin. So yeah, I agree. I believe that we are in a new normal. Anyone, and probably everyone on the call, who's been navigating since March, everything that you had planned and had to throw those plans out the window, show that. I think for most of us, I know for me, boning up on just virtual meetings and things like that is something that I really had to get a grasp of. But with that said, I think what the business model has changed, and what the most notable thing is just the rapid evolution that we're going to be seeing in in-person events. Certainly this year, a lot of us are shifting to virtual events. I believe that in 2021, at the best, it would be probably looking at hybrid meetings. I think though, even before this happened, looking at my group, and though I've been with this organization for the better part of 20 years, I became executive director in November. And I think a lot of our organizations which have been successful with our meetings, they're a big revenue source. And in a lot of ways, we probably have been stuck in kind of same betterness, looking, kind of making minimal modifications to the program year after year, but really needing to look beyond that. I think that we're seeing a decline in the one-size-fits-all approach. People, especially in this day and age, they really want kind of user-controlled experiences like we are all used to in terms of our everyday lives and as consumers. And that's something that we're going to see more of with associations. I think what that means for our meetings and for what we do is just doing a lot more curation of content. Really, no longer can our annual meetings and our programs be serendipitous about, I had a great event. I had a good meeting because I had the lucky chance of meeting these people. People are going to really want value for money and a guaranteed pathway of getting value out of what we provide.
That's great, Doug. Thank you for that. Dale, same question for you, please. Are we moving into a new normal?
Yes.
And if so, how are business models going to change for professional associations?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. And yeah, and I agree 100% with Doug. And it is changing. I'm seeing a number of nodding heads in this discussion too from the audience. I would say that one of the things beyond that is, trying to still have a level of being meaningful in terms of for our members and how we're able to support them. Again, yes, the annual meeting or the live face-to-face events are critical part of the revenue structure for the organization. And in many ways, for us, we've been doing virtual meetings for about 7 years now. So we've had it. Not very many people have been, but a number of people have been using it, but it's maybe not as well known. And the fact too is we have an online portal with asynchronous content from a learning perspective, that content that people can actually take when they're when they're at home having a cup of coffee and such. So a lot of our material actually got a whole heck of a lot of use over the past few months. And we've had, over one page had over 1.5 million views related to COVID-19. And our virtual meetings, we had about 2 or 3 virtual meetings every week, webinars basically. And our most recent webinar a few days ago, we had over 1,000 people sign up and 860 people came to that. So for us, that's pretty good. And the fact is people are hungry for knowledge. So being able to deliver that content to them, I think shows that, we have to be agile in this world where face-to-face is great, probably offers the highest fidelity, but being able to embrace a virtual learning environment and be able to work in that with all the other technologies out there is critical to be, I think, meaningful and relevant. Is the right word I want to use for any association.
Well, thank you both for those comments, and I certainly agree. And let me also just mention now that for the participants, please feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions, to make comments. We'll have time at the end for verbal comments, but if you wish to take advantage of that chat feature, it's certainly available to you. So continuing on, and Dale, I'm going to pick on you to go first on this next one. What have been the most profound adjustments that the American Academy of Ophthalmology has had to make during this interval?
I think internally we have a brick and mortar location. We have about 200 employees, and frankly, we have about, I would say, 20%, around that amount at most, 15 to 20% are working from home or virtual across the country. So when we had to make the move in San Francisco to be really basically working from home, I think that was one of the largest adjustments we've had to make. But overall, it's worked out pretty well. And then, as I mentioned before, our members were very thirsty for information, and being able to be agile and start up different programs to address their needs. I mean, most recently we had what they call an Ophthalmic Knowledge Assessment Program exam that all ophthalmology residents around the country, that's around 1,600 or so residents, have to take an exam at a brick and mortar location at one day, one time. And basically that was supposed to happen around March 20th. About a week prior to that, we could tell, maybe about 10 days prior to, we could tell that things weren't looking good, and having a live exam was not going to work. So we were talking with the vendor and saying, you know, things were not going to look good, and they were thinking they were able to operate as normal, but we had a feeling something wasn't going to work out. And lo and behold, 4 days prior to the event, they canceled. But what we had to do is we had to come up with a virtual exam that had some level of security with it. And actually, we came up with one in about 37 days, and we were able to get 85% of all residents, around 1,400 or so residents, examined during the month of May. And actually, we used a piece of technology we had before, and not to, you know, shamelessly plug Enforme Interactive, but I'm going to shamelessly plug Enforme Interactive. They were able to work with us, and along with our Academy IT, deliver this content. In many ways, the end users, the customers, were quite happy with this approach, and this is something we look forward to working with for the years to come. So I think the thing is having something that, and to Doug's point, you know, we're used to having things go the way they were. We were used to having a brick and mortar location. With COVID-19, and that made us look at a new opportunity, and we turned some lemons into lemonade, and we're able to be successful in that regard. So I think that's probably the most relevant experience that we have, at least from the education side, for my organization.
Well, thanks for that, Dale. And so, Doug, in terms of squeezing citrus here, and what have been the most profound adjustments that the American Society of Bone and Mineral Research have had to make?
Well, certainly, as Dale mentioned, all of us had to deal with is just the adjustment to the fully remote staff. And I'm thankful that we put technology in place a couple of years ago so we could do that seamlessly. I think the things that I wasn't aware of, that, you know, as an exec and as a people manager, like probably a lot of us on this call, is just the self-care, the work-life balance, the sense of team, how you manage team, these things that just are the squishy things of management and people management, is really just kind of honing those things, you know, like a lot of people, you know, my team, I have a team of about 25 people, and they run the gamut. I have single 20-somethings who are, you know, thinking about going to Florida to visit their friends during a pandemic. And you got, on the other end, you have people who just got back from maternity leave before the pandemic. So just managing that, it was a big thing. I think another thing too is just, for me, was the elimination of the in-person volunteer meetings. I was lucky enough to have our winter council meeting in February, so we were able to meet in person here in Washington, D.C. But, you know, there was really a need for me to over-communicate things and really important things, and making sure that people were engaged. And with that said, it's also building that sense of kind of risk tolerance, that we needed to really increase our risk tolerance. That, you know, there's certainly, you know, the sky was kind of falling when we look back in March and April. But we also can't lose sight of the opportunities that such a fundamental shift is having. And for, you know, as a leader, to make sure that you're kind of thinking about it strategically, and making sure, frankly, at the end of the day, you come out on top at the end of this.
Well, great points. And you know, professional associations, as we all know, are such consensus-based organizations, and they thrive on those interpersonal interactions to achieve that consensus, both on the staff level as well as the leadership level. So switching to an entirely remote workforce is a very profound and seismic shift. Dale, has pivoting to a remote workforce exceeded your expectations in terms of effectiveness, or left you somewhat disappointed?
You know, I think overall, you know, when I talk to some of my team, I have about 30 staff under my area, and some folks have adapted well to that environment and some haven't. I think there are some people who are saying, I wish I was back in the office, because their challenges are that some people working in it are not able, don't even have an office to be able to work out of. They might be working at their dining room table, and some people I've heard have been working basically almost out of their closets. So that's a stress for them, and others have adapted quite well to it. So from my perspective, I thought it's gone quite well. We've leveraged Microsoft Teams as the system for us in our organization. It's not as seamless as Zoom, but you know, they're working to improve that environment. I think also with Doug and his experiences from quote unquote the squishy side of it. I mean, I've been having what they call flash mob meetings with my team every week. and it's all voluntary. You don't have to come if you don't want to, but a lot of people come, and we just talk about non-business things. I'll just say, at the beginning, how do you get food delivered to your place? Do you have any hints on how to do X, Y, and Z, or anything for the kids and such? So I try to make it such that we pay homage to that concept. But overall, I've been pretty satisfied the way it's been working. And Teams allows me to be able to call on someone. I might send them a note before I call them, but I could get in touch with someone very quickly. I think the thing is, right now for our organization, we're looking to bring people. We're going to voluntarily open our area next week on July 6th. But the fact is that it's going to be completely voluntary. If people want to come into the office, they can, but they don't have to. And then near the end of the summer, then we'll look at seeing about maybe coming up to our normal capacity. But realistically, it's still going. I expect that we're going to have some type of. We have social distancing, or location has a lot of has tape. Everything's taped off. Only one person in elevators at a time. So we have a lot of already planned approaches to that. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to be like working in the office. If you're going to have to meet people with a mask, and you have if you go walk into someone's office, you can't actually go in there. So anyway, the point is, yes, the long answer to your short question is that I'm pretty, right now I'm neutral about it. It's worked out well in some areas. In other areas, it could be better, but I'm not disappointed. And I'm not going to say this is going to be the way to be as it go on. It's going to be in the future.
Doug, how about you? Has the remote workforce, the necessity of it, exceeded your expectations, or does it leave you disappointed in some ways?
I think we're all learning that work can go on unimpeded with everyone working remotely. And I think that's a great thing that is going to come out of this. Certainly, I've always been the type of person who was in the office 5 days a week, was always available. It's nice not to have to deal with traffic, right? But, I hope the day comes that I think I think a lot of us want that. And certainly there's going to be modifications to our workspaces that we need to be made. Especially since I don't know about a lot of the offices are kind of open concepts. So you're just kind of thinking, as kind of Dale mentioned, even if you can go into the office, what good does it make? You just put yourself at risk, and you can't see anyone face to face, and you can't have a conference room. So, I'm pretty comfortable with the technology and really confident with my team being able to get their work done. I think it's brought us closer together. As the exec, I'm always hyper aware that people, you're the exec, no one wants to really be in a room with you, underneath you, especially, associate and coordinator level folks. But just being able to have those informal, we have informal Zoom happy hours, things like that. It's things that we would have never done in person in terms of having, oh my gosh, the last thing I want people to do is to have to have a drink with their executive director after work. So, I think it's been helpful. And then, certainly just the icebreaker. I mean, we always have an icebreaker COVID related, just like I think one of the early ones was like, what is it that you can't get right now? And, just hearing what people, knowing that we're all in it together. And in a lot of ways, the silver lining has been, I think our team is stronger because of this.
That's interesting. And a very optimistic view. So, and I agree though. But I agree. It has certainly taught us new things, and we've had to exercise new muscles, haven't we, in terms of communication and collaboration. So the pandemic has forced us to innovate. It's forced us to evolve. We've packed years of organizational evolution into a couple of short months. And it's caused us to open our mind to new ways of doing business. And maybe it's also allowed us to say goodbye to some things that perhaps weren't working as well for us as they might have. Have there been any sacred cows or any programs that have needed to be sunset? And this was an opportunity then to evolve beyond them that the pandemic has offered. Doug, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I took over as exec in November, and the organization is in good shape. I think that, it's just I'm able to make a lot more changes, and talking to my team, it's exciting time in a way. I get to really, what we're doing right now in this moment is probably going to set the course of the association for the next 10 years. And to me, that's really exciting looking at it strategically. Certainly the annual meeting is, I think, is probably the biggest sacred cow for most medical scientific associations. And being able, as I mentioned, the same betterness to just kind of re-examine how we do things and what that looks like is something that has really excited me. We've as an organization, we have kind of in fits and starts talked about virtual things and outreach in ways like that have never really come to fruition. But this has really kind of put it at the forefront. And in fact, our annual meeting, which was to be held in September in Seattle, it's going 100% virtual. And kind of talking with the leadership and kind of setting a vision in terms of, we're going to be here for our members when they need us the most. And what does that mean? For us, it means there's no registration for this year's virtual meeting, but we're going to put everything that we usually do on. It's really thinking boldly and acting boldly. I think for us, it's a great opportunity to expand our tent, especially with people who will never come to your event or never sample your programs and things like that, especially internationally, since half of our members are outside the US. I think it's a really exciting time to be in associations. We're not usually at the forefront of much stuff in associations, but being able to kind of have that coverage with your governance and people understanding that there's opportunities here, for me has been really fun, but challenging too.
That's great reflections there. Dale, same question to you. Have there been some sacred cows, perhaps, that you were able to, by necessity, evolve away from or modify because of the conditions as they currently exist?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. There are a number of sacred cows out there. I think one of the biggest sacred cow is the idea of having face-to-face committee meetings. So we have about 500 physician volunteers in the education side who help develop a lot of our publications, our website content, and other items like our self-assessment questions. And typically, they've always wanted to have a face-to-face meeting, either at our annual meeting. We would give them, and we would also give them refreshments and either feed them lunch, or we might even have it at another location in the country. And prior to COVID-19, that was an expectation from our volunteers. Well, what happened here over the past few months, we've started to evolve those meetings into virtual events with no pushback. And that's in terms of T&E, travel and such expenses and such. That travel entertainment, that's actually helped us in that regard. And because of that, we were able to, again, if I tried to do a virtual webinar, either through GoToMeeting or Zoom or Microsoft Teams a year ago, I would have a lot of pushback. Now we're not getting any pushback. And that, with all those volunteers, and there's a significant reduction in those expenses as well. So many of the events have actually gone quite well, and they really appreciate it. Physicians appreciate the fact that they didn't have to travel, they could just work in their home and look at review materials over whenever they need to, well, not whenever, but during this synchronous event. But that's one of the big. There are other sacred cows I have, but I think that's the most significant one that I've seen just most recently.
That was a great comment. So, and it's interesting as we watched the last couple of months unfold, it's been surprising and pleasant to see that, associations have saved on a lot of overhead associated with travel, entertainment, and other things by moving to a virtual environment. We've also seen organizations that have moved to virtual annual meetings improve their margin because they're shedding a lot of the expense of that physical location and all the associated costs. So we're really seeing new business models and new operational models begin to emerge here. And the profile is favorable in terms of both the economics as well as the member value when done properly. So, Dale, do you think members, and it's all about member value and what we do, right? Do you think members have new expectations of professional associations that as a result of this environment and these changes?
Yeah, I would say yes. There is expectation. I think one of the expectations had come up. Well, maybe something we were able to fill very quickly during COVID-19 was the fact of getting back to work. The organization produced, and after basically people had to stop, the physicians had to stop working. We also, we gave them approaches and tools for them to be able to manage their practices appropriately. And then coming back into practice, we're trying to focus on providing resources to keep them engaged with our organization. So I think the main expectation is that in order for us to be successful is, again, to use this maybe overused term of being agile and being able to know your customer at the end of the day and being able to meet their needs and listening to what our members need is critical. So I'm going to say, really at the end of the day, we were, compared to some of our other contemporaries in this field, I think the American Academy of Ophthalmology did quite well in addressing the needs, and it was just evidenced by either the feedback we received or the amount of attendance at our various events. And I think at the end of the day, we were quite successful in that area, but not to rest on our laurels. We need to continue to ask about what our members need, and we're sending out what we call member pulse surveys to a select group of our members to hear what their needs are, and being able to reach out to them and get feedback is critical to be able to, again, serve your customer effectively.
That's really helpful. Doug, same question to you. Have member needs have certainly changed, I think. Have member expectations changed?
I think so. I mean, I think, for us, what we've really been doing during the pandemic is just trying to figure out innovative ways for individuals to connect in meaningful ways with colleagues, since they're not in the labs or if they're in clinic, they're probably doing COVID duty instead of actually, seeing bone patients. For us, what the shift is looking like is really, what are the benefits that you can provide your members outside an annual meeting and publications? Certainly educational content, science, and that's scientifically related is certainly something. Certainly with COVID, just having things in the context of COVID, for example, statements and policies regarding, treating patients on osteoporosis during the COVID pandemic when they can't get to, it's essentially non-essential services, and so they can't get into their doctors. But, I think what we found too is just the professional development and the opportunities. We have a big early career investigator segment, young investigators, so postdocs, people who are early in their research careers. Are there meaningful topics and ways that we can connect these individuals with the resources that they need? Really just looking at kind of innovative ways in engaging members in ways that other organizations in the space aren't doing it, and really just trying to build a sense of community. I think that's the biggest thing. It's really, how do you keep that steady drumbeat for your members all year round, so that they don't look at ASBMR or whatever organization as just an annual meeting. So I think that for us, we made some really great inroads in that regard. I think another thing is just the expansion of our tent is a really important thing. Certainly with a virtual meeting, there's opportunities there. But I think people really, what I've heard is people are really value the steps that we've taken to really be there for them in this time of crisis, and really to expand what we do in a meaningful way to them.
Great, Doug, thanks. So I'm going to open it up to for questions, comments from the audience. And while people are thinking about what they might want to ask, formulating a question, let me just throw one final comment out to you guys, and that is, can you comment on what you're most proud of, what your organization has done during this interval that you're most proud of, and we'll look back on as a very meaningful accomplishment by each of your organizations. And Doug, I'm going to pick on you and ask you to go first.
Well, I mentioned certainly getting the leadership to agree that we should have a free registration for our annual meeting this year was a big step. You know, that's 3,000 people that usually come to our meeting. I'm really proud of my staff team in terms of what they've been able to accomplish. You know, they have brought some great ideas, especially regarding this community building that I mentioned, in terms of, hey, we should have some early career investigator happy hour, Zoom happy hours, and we should do some more things around, you know, certainly things that were on our radar around, you know, diversity, inclusion, and equity, some trainings and some opportunities there. We had other just kind of, you know, professional development things that we've been putting out. As Dale mentioned, you know, we've seen a huge spike in utilization of webinars and virtual content. I think mostly because people are you know, unable to go to the labs and they have a little bit of bandwidth to do those things. So I'm really proud of the way, you know, in short, I would say I'm really proud of my organization's culture of being amenable and open to change in a time like this, and being able to see a future state.
Great. Dale?
Sure. You know, what Doug's points are very similar to what I'm seeing as well. I would say that I'm very proud of our organization for, again, internally making sure we take care of our people well. Our chief operating officer, in line with our HR side, has been trying to make sure that if anyone has issues or has to deal with any type of needs, we've been able to address them very quickly. And I think overall, people, I know we've been having, again, large webinars for all staff, you know, every couple of weeks, just to make sure we're all on the same page. I think externally for our organization across the board, again, being able to address the needs of our members very quickly with what was happening with COVID-19, and, you know, making sure that whatever needs they need, like again, our residents, what I mentioned previously, we were able to address their needs, and many of them were very happy the way it worked out. We had to launch a number of products that were due last month, and we made it out on time, lots of long hours virtually. We had a number of ebooks, a lot of mobile content that our members needed. So we were able to roll that out again a couple of weeks ago on time, on schedule. So a lot of people working hard for that within the education side. And I just, people, even though we were not in the office, people were able to make it happen in a virtual environment. So I'm very proud of that. And then lastly, you know, with what's been happening in, you know, with regards to all the protests and, you know, what's, you know, trying to deal with, you know, in terms of Black Lives Matter and such. And, you know, we had meetings with that internally to discuss it, but the Academy also has taken a stand against the use of rubber bullets. And, you know, we were one of the first, a lot of people were not happy, not a lot, but a number of people were not pleased that we were making a stand just, you know, against the use of rubber bullets in these types of events, because a lot of people, you know, a lot of eye injuries. And, you know, I'm very proud that we were able to, you know, make a stand and discuss those other challenging issues out there and not be afraid to do what's right. And I believe at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do, and having the integrity in place to be able to you know, base your decisions on that, I think is something that, again, we're very proud of.
That's great, and that's, you know, that's the great thing about working for mission-oriented organizations, that they have that grounding that guides them. So we have one question from Cheryl who asks, what formats have your organizations used or are considering for the annual meeting of the future? And I'd open this up to Doug and Dale, of course, but anyone else as well who has thoughts they'd like to share on this.
I can share what we're doing. So, you know, our meeting, our scientific event is largely poster driven. Certainly we get about 1,500 abstract poster submission or abstracts submitted. So, you know, what we're looking at doing this year is, and during our in-person meetings, we usually run 6 concurrents at a time all day. Certainly we're scaling that back, so only doing 4 concurrents, but you know, looking at the meetings of the future, for my organization, it probably looks at doing a lot more virtual posters so that individuals, even if they can't attend in person, since a large majority of those individuals usually only get a poster presentation, especially for emerging countries. Probably putting that online and maybe looking at probably just putting some key, at least initially, looking at just putting some key sessions live or short or quick turnaround so people can view them on the other side of the country. But it's kind of going to, you know, we're going to have to kind of test what works best for our organization. And that's the thing, anyone kind of looking at virtual meetings and what you're learning is there's no one size fits all approach. It's just unique based on the culture and the expectations of the individual association. You know, we're going to look at that. We're committed to making an investment. We recognize it as an investment, but we certainly also, as I mentioned before, recognize it as a tremendous opportunity.
Very good. Dale?
Sure. So, yeah, from our perspective, you know, we have our meeting in November in Las Vegas, and typically we have around 24,000 attendees at our meeting. So right now, as it stands, we're investigating two options diligently right now. One is having a purely virtual meeting, and the other option is having a hybrid virtual live meeting approach. Definitely, you know, we're looking at both right now. We'd like to make a decision sooner than later, but at the same time, we want to make sure we explore the best approaches to handle those types of events. There are a number of situations right now we're seeing, especially in academic institutions, where a number of the physicians, the professors and such, they can't travel. Right. You know, they can't travel for a while, and that's past our annual meetings. So again, we're really looking into virtual. We already have vendors that we've been discussing it with, and we've had a relationship with a vendor before. So it shouldn't be a challenge, but if you are investigating going to a virtual event, you need to make sure you're dealing with it right now, because a number of these providers who can actually do it, they're already swamped by all those requests. So I think luckily we're in a good stead. So if we ever have to make the choice, pull the trigger between, again, virtual versus a hybrid event, we should be able to navigate effectively between the two.
Very good. Other questions or comments? Well, hearing none, you know, we're trying to keep these webinars down to about 45 minutes. We're about at that right now. We know everyone's busy, so without further ado, then let me just thank Dale and Doug for your insights, for the generosity of your time and knowledge, experience. And we have recorded this, so this will be available for others to benefit from on our website and on YouTube as well. So without further ado, then, let me just say thank you, and thanks for all the participants who have joined us today. And I wish you all a safe and happy July 4th holiday.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.